Hello, it's Lion here again, and today we're going to be talking about the Mandalorian again because, well, we're 3/4 of this we're 3/4 through the season. Sorry, I couldn't think of how to word it, and it's not looking too good. Mostly, I've seen a lot of people have negative responses to the last couple episodes, and I get some of the complaints. I understand. But broadly, I think that people are just being too negative. I don't really understand why. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Because storytelling-wise, I don't think The Mandalorian is any worse than before. Maybe it's not as good because it's not as clear. But it mostly seems like a structural issue. And it seems like a very stupid issue that people already are aware how to fix. They just still want to complain about it. Like, I'm not going to say it's not a problem. Like, truly, it is stupid that they decided to put Mandalorian episodes in the Book of Boba Fett. Truly, it is stupid that they didn't give room for Din and Grogu to be alone and be interacting with different people by themselves. It is. But, for whatever reason, they chose to bring them back. And there really is no going back from that. So, based on that, how can we look at The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett to figure out what the hell's going on? Broadly speaking, The Mandalorian always has a chapter that starts the season off with a pretty cool action sequence, which all 3 seasons have had so far. It also has a kind of like quest-giving thing, and then it has a bunch of side quests that slowly build up to the final validation or the final kind of confrontation that finishes the quest, right? And that is the season structure. However, the season structure no longer exists because they put 3 episodes in the Book of Boba Fett. So, episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett is the introduction to the new season, to season 3 of The Mandalorian, right? So that means that the third quest was given. It was, it existed. The 5th episode of Book of Boba Fett was literally introduce the character again with an action set piece, take him somewhere to meet the armorer, get a quest, go somewhere, and then episode 6 of Book of Boba Fett was first quest to, get what he needs, which in this case is a ship, meet up with Grogu again. And then episode 7 was kind of like a side quest that leads into, the next season, right? Or leads into the next part of the story, which in this case is the next season. So that's the first 3 episodes of a season right there. Sadly, the structure is broken because of the fact that this is outside of the season structure. So we have to reset, which is why episode 1 of season 3 of The Mandalorian is the way it is, and why it has to reiterate the thing that was already told to us, which is, Din, you broke the law, you have to go into the mines of Mandalore, and you have to fix yourself, and you have to redeem yourself, right? But before he can do that, he has to do these side quests. Now, honestly, I will admit that the side quest in this part of the story, which is get the IG unit thing, doesn't really work for me because it's kind of stupid. Like, Din is a very pragmatic character, and him wanting the one droid doesn't really make sense, especially because it becomes kind of useless. However, it becomes useless or irrelevant because he can get another droid, and that's good enough for him. But I do think that this is still going to come around at some point, especially with the fact that we got Ugnaughts in the latest episode, right in episode 6. So, sadly, the structure is broken, and so episode 4 of the third quest has to reiterate episode 1 of the third quest. Then we get the next episode, and the next episode, and then everything culminates in episode 4, where we have finally officially finished the third quest. That's 7 episodes of content. That is basically a season. So episode 5, when everything kind of finally makes sense and they go back to Navarro, is the new massive action set piece that introduces the next quest. So that would basically be the start of season 4 if we're doing the one quest per season thing. It's pretty simple, and I don't understand why people can't get this through their head, because it's literally the reason why people are having issues, because they don't understand, or they can't seem to like pick up on the fact that the structure doesn't work anymore. It has not worked since the Book of Boba Fett. And so you just have to look at the quest and what episodes and the episode length that it takes to finish a quest, which is about 7 or 8 episodes, with a lot of the episodes being side quests that lead into the main quest, right? So technically, we have had 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, or 3 quests that each correlate to one season. And episode 5 was the start of the new quest. And then episode 6, which was, this week's episode, is the second episode in that new quest, right? So that's why it doesn't really feel like it's episode 6 of a massive season, because it's really not. The way that it's structured is just not that way, the way that you would think. And I think that is fundamentally the problem and why people aren't really enjoying The Mandalorian as much. Also, the problem is that it is kind of expanding a little bit too much and doing things that the average Joe that watches The Mandalorian probably doesn't care about, which is the New Republic stuff. I don't like the sequels. I would really like it if The Mandalorian stayed away from the sequels, but the core of The Mandalorian has always had the sequels in mind, because the Imperial Remnant, the base on Navarro that had like these snow clones in the background, the fact that they want Grogu, who is a very high Mandalorian or high midichlorian count person, all makes sense. It all ties to the fact that Palpatine, for some fucking stupid reason, managed to survive the explosion of the second Death Star, and is trying to find a body, which is exactly what Rey is, which actually leads into, which means that The Mandalorian leads into the sequels. I don't like that. I hate that. It's a problem. I really wish it wouldn't happen, but it is, and there really is no point in complaining about it. So let's get into reviewing or kind of talking about the latest episodes. So I really enjoyed episode 5. And I really liked episode 6. I thought episode 6 was awesome. It basically felt like a Clone Wars episode, which I think is amazing. Was it kind of weird to have 3 massive cameos? Not really. Not for me. I didn't really care. I have no attachment to Lizzo or Doc Brown, so or the guy that plays Doc Brown, so I don't really care. I really enjoyed Jack Black, and the character that Jack Black played, which is basically himself in Star Wars cosplay, works. It is exactly the type of ridiculous character that would exist in Star Wars, and it's fine. I also really enjoy the setting. I thought it was interesting that it's this kind of like utopian society that really isn't utopian, because it is built on the backs of a sentient species that has no representation, right? Which is the droids, right? Which is really interesting, and they're all basically what's it called, like slaves, based on the fact that they were part of the losing side of a war. That totally makes sense. That is some very interesting world building and very interesting and kind of thoughtful expressions of some political or political kind of ideas. This kind of utopia doesn't really exist, and anything that acts like it is probably dystopian, as long, if you dig a little deeper, which is kind of very clear in this episode, right? And you have to have an outsider enter in order to be able to tell this, which is totally good. It's very sci-fi. I really enjoyed that. Stuff like Blade Runner and iRobot kind of deal with this type of idea as well, right? So I thought it was good. It was very well thought out. It was a lot less samurai and Western inspired. It was a lot more kind of like general contemporary sci-fi inspired, and it also had this kind of Law and Order, CSI kind of cop show vibe to it, which I really enjoyed. And there's a lot of good character development between Din and Bo-Katan. Like, they're not going to be a power couple or anything. I don't think that that's where it's going, because it doesn't really make sense to me that they would do that. But there is kind of this camaraderie, this maybe like brotherhood feeling between the two of them, and the fact that Katie Sackhoff's character Bo-Katan also kind of has this attachment to Grogu now, and she kind of makes nice little remarks to him, and she looks proud when he does something good, and she kind of feels this connection with them is great, because they are the first people that accepted her after she was kind of like felt like she had been abandoned. It all makes sense, and the fact that Din doesn't really trust battle droids. And, you know, some people I've seen say that there's kind of a lack of consistency with Din's character when it comes to droids. I don't think that's true. We learned that there's certain types of droids that Din is completely fine with after the fact that, you know, IG-11 sacrificed himself for Din and for Grogu, mostly for Grogu, right? And this is why Din is okay with IG-11 and also okay with non-combat style droids, because we have seen this. He's fine with the BD droid that Pelimoto has. He's all right with R5. He's generally not going to do anything too mean or shitty to most droids, as long as they're not like, you know, assholes to him first, or that don't do things that make him annoyed, like the one droid that made him remove all of his weapons, right? He didn't like that droid, but it was because they're not able to be like reasoned with emotionally. They're completely logical beings, and sometimes that doesn't really make sense, right? It clashes, because there's things that are emotional that we can reason that, you know, droids fully reasoning cannot. And so it makes sense that would be kind of a conflict. And in this case, he was literally seeing the things that he has nightmares about, or the things that he, you know, has PTSD about, because they are the things that murdered his family, right? And I think we forget that Din is like a 40-year-old man. He's technically younger than Baby Yoda, than Grogu, because he was like around 10 looking, right? In the flashback that we got in the first season, where he was during, you know, in the Clone Wars. And the Clone Wars was like 3 years, or like a year and a half, let's say, before the start of the Empire. The Empire lasted for 30 years. So if Din was 10 during the Clone Wars, and this is post Clone Wars, post Empire. I think it's 5 years after the Empire. That means that he's at least 45, which is more or less 5 to 10 years younger than Bo-Katan, right? So that means he is around 40 years old. And that means that he's had 30 years of crazy trauma associated to droids and 30 years of hating droids. It doesn't really make a difference if he's been okay with some droids for 2 years. Broadly speaking, it makes sense that he would go back to being, you know, shitty or horrible to droids. He would regress a bit, as you know, because a 30-year-old habit is a lot stronger than a 2-year kind of resolution, right, that he's kind of had. It makes total sense. I don't see why people are like so like unnuanced about this. It makes total sense that he would be like this. Why? Like, do people not know how people act, like, in real life? If anything, it's more realistic that he would do that than if he would completely be, like, okay with droids at all. So, I don't know. I think that really wasn't a big problem. I think people just want to find things to complain about, so they do. The other thing I see people complain about a lot is that Din isn't really the main character of the story anymore. I really disagree with this. Yes, technically Bo-Katan is more prominent than any other side character has ever been, but Din is still the one that is doing all of the important stuff. Din is the one that goes into the lair where the Mythor is. He is the one that makes all of the findings at the in this last episode. He's the one that actually saves a kid. He's the one that has the connections with the armor and with Paz Vizsla. He's the one that brought Bo-Katan to the covert. He's the one that saved Bo-Katan. He basically has done everything. It's just that the way that it's presented makes it seem like it's less than Bo-Katan is, but it's really not. Without him, basically Bo-Katan would be dead. She wouldn't be part of the covert. She would not have anything to do. Ragnar would be dead. Paz Vizsla would probably be dead too. The armor would have never been able to move all of the people to Nevarro again. Nevarro would be destroyed. There would be a lot more pirates going on. Gorian Shard would still be alive. Like, there's so many things that all tie back directly to Din. So I don't see how Bo-Katan is the main character. She is, at best, the character that has the most interesting developments, and maybe that's true. But honestly, I do still think that Din is the main character. I don't really see why people think he's not. Okay, I realized that I forgot to talk about something, but I didn't really feel like setting up again, so I'm just gonna do it really quick like this. So, I don't understand why people want Din to be the Mandalore. Like, do you guys realize that that's gonna shift the show fundamentally, right? Like, even more than it's been shifting already. Like, the Mandalorian worked and it was everyone's favorite Star Wars thing when it was a small lone wolf and cub adventure of the week type story with slight overarching elements, right? And if Din is the Mandalorian, or the Mandalore, the ruler of a nation, which is actually a planet, do you not realize that that's going to be a huge change, a huge shift in the type of storytelling that has to be told? Because it's not going to be an adventure of the week type thing anymore. He's not going to have time to go on an adventure to save Boba Fett. He's going to be ruling a planet. He has to be kingdom building. He has to be in an office talking to these crazy people, these shitty people that want to take control of things because they want political power. Do you guys realize that that's not really the type of show that The Mandalorian is? It really makes no sense for Din to be the Mandalore like that, unless it would be like a traveling tribe, and like Mandalore would be the ship that all of the Mandalorians live in, and they would all be going across the galaxy kind of crusading, right? Like, if that was the case, that would make sense, but that is definitely not what's going to happen, because the whole thing is we got to go retake Mandalore, right? Once they retake it, someone has to be in charge, and that's definitely going to not be Din Djarin, because that would be a boring-ass show to the average watcher. Now, I am a big Star Wars fan. I really think that Star Wars flourishes when it does weird things and different things, and I think it would be pretty cool to have a Game of Thrones style political intrigue type show about Mandalorians, but I really don't think that's going to go, off that well with people, especially if it shifts, if it causes a shift, right, between this adventure of the week into this political thing. If it starts off as a political thing and it stays that way, I think that would work. And that might be what's going to happen. Maybe Katie Sackhoff is going to have a Bo-Katan spinoff that's going to be called Mandalore, or Tales of Mandalore, or The Story of Mandalore, or something like that, or The House of Kryze, something stupid like that, some kind of generic fantasy title type thing. And then it's going to be a political intrigue show on Mandalore with Mandalorians, with a warrior culture, kind of like Vikings, but it's going to be someone else, and it can't be Din Djarin. So I don't really understand why people are so invested in the fact that Din's going to be Mandalore, Din's going to be the ruler of a planet, when they don't, like, it seems like they don't understand what's going to happen to the show if that happens. So that's another thing that I would have wanted to talk about that I forgot to mention. So there you go. Now I'll sign off properly in the original clip. So see you guys. So yeah, I don't know. I do know that I have been reiterating a lot of stuff I said in my other reviews. So I understand if you're kind of not interested in watching this. So that's all good. But I think that's interesting and meaningful to reiterate this stuff, because no one seems to have thought about this or picked up on this, and no one is really talking about it. Mostly I just see people complaining and people being completely happy with it, and I don't really see that many nuanced takes, so it's kind of interesting to kind of be someone that is providing those, even if no one watches my videos. So that's why I did this. And I'd be really interested in talking to you guys and seeing what your opinions on The Mandalorian are down below. And yeah, so that's basically all there is to this. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below, of course. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.